All right, we have a number of visitors today, and y'all have not been able to enjoy the games that we've been playing, Jeopardy and Scrabble and Family Feud. So we need a game today. And go ahead and stand up, because Kelsey did the children's sermon, and this is my favorite children's sermon, but you get it today. So go ahead and stand up. We're going to have an active game. Okay. I did not put this on my resume, but I won a silver medal in the Northwest Arkansas Teenage Red-Haired Left-Handed Simon Says Calling Competition. You ready? Yeah. Don't believe everything you hear, Simon Says. Okay, this is an older crew, so if you have not played Simon Says, if Simon says to do something, you do it. If Hansen says to do something, don't do it. Just for this game, when Hansen says other things, it's fine. But here we go, okay. Simon says, clap your hands. Simon says, clap and hold them together. Simon says, bow your head. Our Father, who art in heaven. None of you fell down. Good job, good job, good job. We'll pray that later, the whole thing. Okay, Simon says, nod to your neighbor. Simon says, say good morning to your neighbor. Simon says, touch your nose. Touch your neighbor's nose. Ooh, yeah. You can pick your friends. Yeah. Okay, we're going to ramp it up now. Okay. Simon says, raise your left hand. Raise your right hand. Okay, Simon says, raise your left hand. Simon says, raise your right hand. Simon says, touch your left shoulder. Simon says, touch your other shoulder. Don't believe everything you see either. Yeah, okay, you're good sports. You can have a seat. You can have a seat. Simon says you can have a seat. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is like children's church in here. Hey, I hope the object lesson is kind of clear there in what Ken read for us, and I'm so glad Ken had that, because there's kind of some attitude in what James is writing, so the liturgist needs some attitude, and you can bring that, brother. James, one of the little brothers of Jesus, the two of them must have learned, they played all the games when they were kids, they must have learned at Mary's knee. Their dad, Joseph, must have taught them everything that he knew before he passed away, I'm sure when they were young somewhere. As Jesus got older, the older brother would have shaped James's worldview too. Now, in first century Israel, and maybe this happens in your house or your world too, but people used to think that faith is mostly about the culture you grew up in. I grew up with these people, so I'm Christian. They grew up with those people, so they are fill in the blank. Okay, that was normal there. Or some people then, some people now, they would really emphasize rituals and prayers that tended to set the boundaries for who belongs in and who belongs out. If you said the things just right, you're one of us. If you do this wrong, you're not one of us. And for a lot of people, then and now, what really mattered in faith is what you believed, what you could write down, what you could say. And there's some room for nuance in this, but some people would have lines where 2 or 3 things are fundamental. If you believe this, you belong. If you don't, get out of here. Or some people would get lists of 8 or 10 things that were super important, that define the church. Some people would have a whole page, some a whole book. Some, if you don't believe what Simon says, there's something wrong with you and you're going to be in that outer darkness. Now, compared to all of that, Jesus and James had an idea. And James tells us faith is not about any of those things. It's about doing love. To him, faith is about action. You can mimic Jesus in his compassion. Maybe he listens to. This is just one of the things you can do with folks. Maybe there's someone on the street, poor and disabled, and you can listen to them. Or you can volunteer for an agency that supports people in poverty or disability today. You can advocate for the well-being of all people in the public sphere, which might mean resisting the powers that would exploit the poor. And those are all love in action. Jesus did it, and James said, do that. You could mimic God's very creation in the way that love holds everything together. You could just connect with someone at church, grab someone and say, let's go have a coffee. Let me learn more about your life. That's a loving gesture. You could volunteer with the hospitality team and make sure that there is always a space for people to bump into each other and to bump into Jesus in a house like this. Or you can live your life in such radical ways, such radical solidarity that challenges America's myth of rugged individualism. You can live out God's network of love when your every action displays a distrust of the powers of the world and your every action implies a more peaceful kingdom. Those are all love in action. Jesus did those kind of things, and James says you do that too. The alternative is you can just think about God. And you can make your little Jenga pieces of all your beliefs, and they go up there, and at some point in your life, one of those beliefs gets pulled out, and what happens to the Jenga tower? Falls over. You can try to make that Jenga tower, and you can, when it stands up really beautiful, you can congratulate yourself for being so right, and there's no need to shake the foundations at all, and the other people, they really like your Jenga tower, and you really like their Jenga tower, and you can have little parties with the 7 people who agree with you about heaven and hell and sin and sex. You can do that if you want. Now, don't get me wrong. It's great to think about God. It's great to wrestle with God. The word Israel means wrestle with God. It's great to wrestle with ideas about God. That is one of the regular and holy parts of a faithful life. For certain, Jesus believed a lot of things, and he spent time with people who never believed those things. He spent time with people who felt things about their history, with money or with sexuality. He spent time with people who had internalized judgment about who they are. He spent time with people who were so stuck in broken systems that they could never possibly believe their way out. We can't either. You can't believe your way out of the brokenness that is around us and that's harmed you. And Jesus met those people with grace. And James said, do that. Now, some people think that James laid it on a little thick. Some people think I lay it on a little thick every Sunday once in a while. Some of you think that, yeah. Some people read James as setting up too much of an either or, because he did use some strong language. Faith without good works is dead and useless. Useless that's a very judgmental word. And maybe you're hearing it that way. Maybe when Ken read it and I've talked about it, maybe you've heard it as too much either or, and you would rather there be some balance and interconnection and flow between the two so that certain behavior can enhance your heart and changing your mind can affect your behavior. That's great. Martin Luther thought it was way more like that with interaction, and Martin Luther, he started a thing called the Lutheran Church. Yep, you probably heard of that one. And Martin Luther wanted to kick out the whole book of James. He called it a gospel of straw because it was so ephemeral. Now, I'm sure all of us at times have misheard something and overreacted. Yeah, there's a hand up right there. I didn't even call for hands, but yes. Have you ever, you mishear something from someone in your household and then you overreact and then later, yeah, it can happen. It can be painful. But so thank goodness in this case that cooler heads prevailed. The book stayed in the Bible. And over time, far more Christians have understood James more generously. So I'm going to try to restate him without the dead and useless language that might capture more balance, because I think it's fair to assume that James was wiser than that easy criticism. He just had strong language. So first, I think it is totally fair to cast this passage in the light of the whole letter, and in the light of all of Jesus, and in the light of all the Bible. So I think that all tells us that it's still part of James's action to cultivate our souls in ways that drive active love. That's the balance there. Part of that process is about belonging to communities like this, so that you can grow in your understanding while you manifest a place of belonging for others. Second, I think we should absolutely try out practices even before we're convinced at all that they will make a difference in our lives. Some of you don't believe in prayer at all. Fine, try it anyway. You have other things to do on Sunday morning. Great, me too. There's a lot of mountains right there. I'd love to be there. No, but show up here anyway. You're invited here. And if you come here, especially when you make it a habit, and when you get involved in the life of the church, when you reflect on your involvement, every layer building up and up, not Jenga, but building up a foundation and strength, Even when you check in once in a while, even online when you're just taking part that way, that's great. You are still, maybe you're going to affect your life and your neighbor's lives. In other words, I think it's okay to say fake it till you make it. Just keep on doing it. Sometimes you don't feel that God is in your life, and that's a season, but just keep coming, and I think the people can serve the Spirit for you. Or maybe say it with a more sacred tone. Do things lovingly so that you can learn to behold a more real love. Now, this passage is pointed, yes, but I think it's more fair to James to read it under the impression that there should always be a connection, a synergy between the head and the heart on one hand and your hands and your feet on the other. Religion at its worst separates those, and every time those get separated, it seems like, the loud religions at least, they always prioritize some fundamental beliefs that almost always exclude and stigmatize people. It's like a natural line. Once they get separated, one gets heavier, and that starts to hurt. Religion at its best connects those and ensures that you do not lose the thread of actively loving one another, in person and in the public arena, even through advocacy, even through political action. Now, what about religion here? Especially for those of you who are still considering what this church is like. It seems clear to me that belief is not what holds us together. I don't think I could come up with one sentence that every one of you agree on. I thought about it. I thought about trying some out and having people stand up, but that was a dumb game. Simon says way more fun. We have a lot of mission programs, a lot of people engage in that, but I don't think that defines us exactly, because there's the heartbeat of the church, there's the action of the church. I don't know. We have special ceremonies, we have special words, but we're not held together by those kind of actions or those kind of cultures. The question has come up here a lot lately, actually. What does hold us together? So I want to remind you what our church motto is. On your bulletin on the front page, you've probably seen it a few times and ignored it plenty. I don't know who wrote this. My guess is that when you were in junior high, someone wrote this, maybe Linda was part of this, but they did a great job. So I'm going to read it slowly with you. Community of Grace is a family of faith made up of ordinary people. You're all ordinary. None of you are more special than the others. From all walks of life. Just some examples: single and married, young and old, religious and spiritual, and of various races, gender identities, and sexual orientations. Now, what brings us together, this is the question, what brings us together, is our desire to follow the path that Jesus walked. Desire sounds kind of like a heart word to me. What keeps us together is the support and nurture that our members enjoy here. And support and nurture sounds like an active word to me. God is at work in this community, and all are welcome to experience this exciting adventure of faith with us. I really like that last line. I wonder who these people were 40 years ago who wrote this motto, this exciting adventure of faith. Now, some of you have been here a long time, and you may have a different perspective, but what I notice about this church is this. We are at our best when we support and nurture each other and our neighbors. That's the community active loving. We are at our best when we do that in ways that soften and shape our hearts. That's the grace and the grounding and the soul. We are at our best when we actively care about each other and about our neighbors in ways that gracefully shape our heart. Now, there's always room to do better. There's always room for us to do better, especially when it comes to moving from what brings us together to what keeps us together. That's a big gap in any church. It's not hard to have visitors come in. It's really hard to find those little puzzle pieces to connect. There's always room to do better, but at our best, community and grace happen at Community of Grace. So I believe this church is at its best when our desire for a better life and a better world draws us together to sing and serve and support people. We are at our best, especially when that very human desire shows up in the grammar of spirituality and in the tradition of Jesus. And sure, we're not always at our best. Sometimes we can be silly. Sometimes we can get tuned out over here and just kind of forget what's going on in worship and just look through the beautiful windows, which were inspired by a sense of serving the people in the city and seeing the beauty of creation that can ground our soul. Sometimes when we're not our best, we can get overburdened, and that just raises frustrations that we do too much here. Yeah, we can take breaks. We're all allowed to take breaks. That happens. When we have room to talk about that, that's great, when we find a better way through. But for all the glitches in the life of a church family, any church family, what holds us together and what gives us sort of an identity, it's not a program, it's not a place, it's not a set of rules. I don't think it's a static thing at all. What holds us together, it seems to me, is a direction that we're hoping to go and the collective actions we take to get there. We want to walk a better path, and so we commit to more peace, less anxiety, more mercy, less guilt, more justice, less stigma. We're not going to agree on the details, and that's fine, but I believe, or at least I hope, that we're going to keep moving forward in faith, active in love, grounded in soul. Amen.